Jonathan Jones alongside the general manager of the Atlanta Falcons, Terry Fontenot. Terry, thank you very much for joining us. Before today, I think the last time I saw you, were you in a suite with LeBron James at the college football national playoff?
So, great question. I was in a suite next to LeBron James.
Okay.
So I was in Arthur Blank's suite, and LeBron James was in the suite next to us.
Okay.
So I was in a suite. But right after, the deal goes on the Jumbotron, and then I started getting texts from some of the players and the guys thinking I was with LeBron James.
Sure.
But clearly, I'm not cool enough to hang out with LeBron James.
Well, I don't know. I was curious. You get that GM title.
No.
Maybe you get to be in a suite with LeBron.
No.
Did y'all talk at all?
It's not a good thing to be next to him anyway, because it just makes you look like the smallest person in the world. You don't realize how big of a human being he is until there's certain people that when you get around him, it just makes you feel like tiny.
Right.
Like he's at a different level in terms of his size.
That was always when I was around Julius Peppers. It was hard for me to understand how someone could actually be that size. So I know what you're saying. Hey, you were just at the podium earlier making some noise. I just got to go ahead and dive into it, especially at the quarterback position. You guys have no intentions of cutting Kirk Cousins, huh?
Well, at this point, just like any other plans we have with any players on the roster, we always have to make plans, and then we have to go through the process, and we continue to and there's times you have to pivot and adjust. And so just like we said at the end of the season, our plan was to move forward. That hadn't changed.
Is that going to make for some awkwardness? Because it certainly seems on the outside like it has a high potential to get a little awkward.
Well, I mean, again, with any other player, there's always outside perspectives, and there's inside things, and there's the truth, and But at the end of the day, high respect for Kirk, his representation. We'll keep all those conversations private as we move forward.
Have you all, understanding that you will keep private those conversations, have you had any conversations yet with other teams potentially interested in Kirk?
Not something we would share. You just can't. Jonathan, it's not just with that specific situation, but there's a lot of decisions that we have to make on our roster, whether you're talking about extensions, possible trades, because at the end of the day, we have to do everything we can do to get ourselves prepared to actually be active in free agency in the right way, and then obviously in the draft. But we have to put this puzzle together, and there's a lot of variables, a lot of moving pieces to it. But as we go through it, we just have to make sure we stay above board, keep those things private.
Okay. So we don't know what the cap number is yet. Right now, you guys are a little bit above the cap with some work to do, probably some fairly easy restructures to get underneath that.
Yep.
We're not concerned necessarily about that. What do you anticipate you all will be able to do in free agency?
Well, the hardest thing right now what we do is we go through and we evaluate our roster. We know what our specific needs are and the needs that we have to fill. And you want to do the best job you can do in free agency, filling those needs prior to the draft. It's like you don't want to go to the grocery store hungry because everything looks good and you're trying to buy everything. You want to have a good meal before you go to the grocery store, and you can be more selective, right? So that's what we want to do in free agency. But in order to do that, you have to start with your roster first. And so, but when you're looking at all the free agents that could fill your needs, the problem right now is you don't know what those numbers are going to be.
Sure.
You anticipate. We have our administration department, our analytics department, our pro department. I believe we do a really good job trying to forecast and trying to anticipate what the numbers are going to be, but you just don't know. So right now you just have to evaluate those players, know what players would fit for you, and then when the bell rings and we can start learning those things, you have to be ready to attack.
One of your guys, Drew Dahlman, probably the best center who is on a number of top free agent lists.
Yeah, he should be.
Are you guys going to be able to retain him?
Look, we'll see. We love Drew and everything he's done. And he's an even better person than he is a player. All those things. So it's all positive with Drew. Have a lot of confidence in our offensive line, and he's a big part of that. But again, you just don't know at this point. Sometimes there's players that you can retain, and sometimes players get numbers because anything we do at one spot, that's going to affect every other spot on the roster. So we love Drew, but we'll see what happens.
What has to be that next step for Michael Penix Jr. this year? What are you looking for from him?
I think now the special thing about Mike is you see his poise, and we all know the physical talent and all those things, but his poise, the way he handles himself in every situation. And so now as we get into this offseason, it's a cool time for him to be able to really build the chemistry. And Last year, the only receiver on our roster going into the offseason was Drake London.
Right.
But now you have Drake and Mooney and Mike and Kyle, and you go through all of our Bijan, Tyler, you go through all our skill positions, and a lot of things are set in that sense. So now he can really spend time with those guys, building the chemistry. And the cool thing about Mike is he's got all this physical talent, but he is an unbelievable worker, unbelievable communicator, natural leader, all those things. So it's going to be cool for him this offseason to really spend time building up that chemistry and really working through improving in all areas.
I think it's been 7 years since a playoff victory for the Atlanta Falcons organization.
Yep.
What's going to need to happen to make sure it doesn't get to 8?
Yeah, not okay. And we talked about how disappointed we were. We let our fans down. You even feel like the players in our building, like we have some really good high character guys that work really hard and do some really good things, and we have good players in spots, and you feel like you let them down when we don't win enough. You feel like you let everybody in the building down, so it's disappointing. So now what we got to do is we got to move forward, and we got to focus on starting with our roster, looking at making those right decisions, the restructures, the extensions, who are we keeping, what decisions who can we not bring back, making those right decisions, attacking free agency aggressively, and then in the draft, whether we have 5 picks or more, making sure we're hitting on those picks. So we got to be effective, we got to be aggressive, because we have to do everything we can do to make sure we're putting this team in better position to win.
Speaking of draft picks, Terry, it's been 4 years. You've been the GM 4 drafts. Your first-round picks have all been offense.
Yeah.
Is this the year? Is this the year you finally go defense?
It's super deep on defense, and all these drafts are different, right? Last year, the first defensive player came off at 15. We'd sign ourselves up for that this year, but we know it's not going to happen. There are a lot of, but it's super deep defensively. We always have to take the best player, because at the end of the day, they're the best player for us, because we got to improve our total team. Now, that can be at any level on defense. It could be in any spot, but there's a lot of good defensive players in this draft, so it's exciting.
Who excites you the most? What position group? You're not going to tell me the player. What position group excites you the most?
Man, that's because I would say every level. You look at the secondary, whether we're talking about safety, corner. There's linebackers that do a lot of different things, versatile, because there's some guys that you can say inside linebacker, but now they can also play on the edge and they can move around and do some different things. Obviously, some really good defensive linemen. I would say at every level on the defense, there's some really, really good players. And the coolest thing is there's versatility, like whether we're talking about a safety that can also be a nickel and do some different things, and a corner that you can even vision as a safety because of the physicality and the toughness. Again, linebackers that can play on the edge. When you look at this, the uniqueness of this draft, there's a lot of really good defensive players, but there's also a lot of good, versatile defensive players that you can do some different things with.
And that seems to be the way of the future in the NFL. You talk about those versatile defensive backs, right? That's really going to become more in vogue. We just saw what the Philadelphia Eagles were able to do.
Yes.
But I think a lot of your fans who are out there watching, listening to this, are saying, yeah, I want to hear him talk about the pass rushers.
Yeah.
That's been a spot
yes.
that you guys, you have to shore up. And it seemed like you guys got that sack production at the tail end of the season.
Yep.
But it had been a while. How do the Atlanta Falcons move forward in this draft and this free agency, evaluating the edge market?
Yeah, there's some good edge rushers in this draft. There's interior pass rushers. There's edge rushers, and again, there's linebackers that can come up and rush on the edge and have a lot of confidence in Raheem and now Brick coming in. There's already been some things that we did last year with some of our players, things that we did with Caden Ellis, things we did with AK, and our pass rush really ticked up at the end of the season. So that's the exciting part, to really sit down with our defensive staff and with Raheem and sit down with the scouting staff and go through how we utilize each one of these players, because there's some really good players. But it's all, we talk about it, it also matters if people are wide open. It doesn't matter if the rushing going to have time to get there.
Right.
And so it's important at every level. So there's really good corners and safeties as well. So we just have to add some good players.
There you have it. LeBron James' best friend, sort of.
Man, I wish. That'd be awesome.
Terry Fontenot, thanks for the time.
Thank you, man.